All right, welcome back to Mr. Post Frame. Our current build, we've had some weather, so we weren't able to get the Versetta stone and some of the interior framing started as soon as we wanted. So we're going to take today and talk about one of the most commonly asked questions we get, and that is how do we insulate our post frame home? This is probably one of the most important things when you're building is insulation. What do you do? What is the right thing to do? How much should you spend? How much should you expect to spend? We can attest to, we use spray foam in this house and we had some major problems, so we learned a lot from that. So why don't you go ahead and just talk a little bit about the situation that we had.
Sure.
And kind of what we learned from that.
Well, we're coming up on 2 years since we had what I would call a almost catastrophic event with our home. We weren't sure, are we going to have to bring this whole house down, or what are we going to do? So we found ourselves in a spot where we were getting ready to paint, and Paul started seeing puddles of water along the walls. And that got really confusing to him. So he tore out part of the wall, realized that we had bad insulation on top of our spray foam and it was completely soaked through. We were able to wring water out of it. And so we brought in a bunch of experts. We brought in the spray foam distributors. We brought in our installer. Paul called all over the country. And for a long while, nobody could give us a good answer of what had happened. Everybody was pretty confused.
So a couple things to note. We got to our drywall point in the middle of winter. So we're in south central Iowa. It was really cold. We were going through a polar vortex. So there was a lot of confusion by people that, hey, this has only happened because it's so cold. You had drywall, so there's a lot of moisture. And yes, that is true, but we wouldn't have found this problem. And we'll talk a little bit more about what happened in this video. But it was a pretty disappointing.
Yes, it was very disappointing. We were in a state of, we didn't know what was going to happen with our project. We had to come to a complete standstill on it because we also knew that the expense that we had to go to, we had to wait on a lot of insurance people to come through and examine everything. So it cost us 70 working days of time on our build, which at that point, we were at a really critical part of getting our family moved in and, moving forward with this project. So it cost us a lot of money, a lot of time. We were able to finally, Paul found somebody in the spray foam industry that offered a couple people that offered a ton of assistance. And we were able to figure out what had happened and how to move forward and things like that. That's where we're coming from with a lot of the information that we share and the reasons why we do what we do in this stage of our build.
All right, so based on what happened to us has led us to a lot of the information we're giving you today and how we insulate our clients' homes, how you should think about your house. And so in today's video, we're going to talk about what are your insulating options, what are the costs, because that's always a big issue for people, and things to consider with each of those options. If you are a spray foamer, I love spray foam. But what happened to us was suggested by a spray foamer in order to cut cost to get the R value we wanted. So that's an important thing to think about. It's, not everybody that does a certain job knows all the ins and outs of it, and that's just the way it is. So you need to educate yourself. There's a lot of information out there on the internet on insulation, people burning it, but you got to be really careful with that. I've watched a video on a burn test on different types of insulation, and the spray foam they were using wasn't closed cell spray foam, it was can foam, and that's a big difference. So you got to be really careful what you're watching. To start this out, we're just going to talk about basic options you have to insulate your house. Obviously, I have an opinion, but I'm going to give you the information on each of these, and then you guys can make the decision for yourself. We are in building zone 5A, which requires that you have a vapor barrier on the warm side of the wall. So that would be on the interior side. So your first option is a fiberglass batt. So in a post frame, if you have like an 8-foot spacing, you can actually get batts that cover that whole 8-foot bay. If you used unfaced, you would have to put at least a 6 mil vapor barrier on the inside. That's your first option. They want you to have like an R21. The important thing to think about, there's been a lot of testing that what is the actual R value of that batt when it's placed in the wall, and it never achieves what it says it actually is. I mean, obviously that's all done in a lab. Your biggest problem in insulation packages is air leakage. No matter what you use, what you have to do is you have to stop air leakage. So batt insulation is going to cost you somewhere around $1.92 a square foot, and that's for fiberglass. And that is a DIY method. You don't have to pay somebody to come and do that. It's something that is easily done by yourself. In my opinion, it's probably my least favorite of the methods, just because it is such a subpar product when you're talking about sealing out air. Things to consider when using fiberglass. In a post frame building, you do not have to have plywood sheathing on your walls to get your shear value. That comes from steel. Now, if you're going to put siding on it, obviously you would have plywood on there, and then your siding would be attached to that. So my personal preference is if somebody's going to use a fiberglass batt, you need a house wrap on, but then I would want some plywood sheathing, because the house wrap is going to stop a good portion of your air. It's an air barrier. It's not a vapor barrier. It's going to stop a lot of that, but it's not going to keep insects and stuff like that from getting into your wall, and it's not going to stop all of the air. So that's just something to consider. I'm not considering that in the price. And the price per square foot is just for the product. It's not installed, because this is kind of a DIY based channel, kind of how I do this. And so for somebody doing it yourself, you're not paying somebody. I would guess you're going to pay somewhere around 25 cents to 50 cents a square foot for somebody to come install that. Maybe I'm way off, but I would not do it for anything less than that. So you can kind of do the math on your own. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about, I'm sure a lot of you watch R&R Buildings. Kyle's a great builder, and the method he is using on his most recent build is Rockwool with a Siga Majrex air control layer. The thing that's nice about this style of insulating is it is also DIY friendly, and it is going to be far and above and superior to the fiberglass batt. So Rockwool is just a good product. It's doesn't burn, so you're safe if you're worried about that. It literally does not burn. Fiberglass doesn't either, but it's just a more dense. It fits in tight spaces easier. I feel like it's easier to cut and get nicer fit in all those little tiny spaces that you end up having to insulate in your wall. The Siga Majrex is an air control layer that seals out and controls the moisture in your wall. So it is your vapor barrier. You can get Rockwool for a 2x6 wall, which is an R23, and that's gonna hold its R value way better than fiberglass. For that batt, you're looking at $2.51 a square foot. And then the Siga Majrex vapor barrier air control layer is about 55 cents a square foot. So a total package on that is going to be around $3.06 a square foot. I don't think I would install all of that for less than $1 a square foot. So you're around $4.06, right around $4 a square foot total. I'm not going to include that in the price comparison, the labor, because it's something you could do yourself, and it's easy math for you to figure out if you can figure out your square footage.
When you're talking about square footage, you're referring to the walls,
Yes.
not your floor plan square footage.
Right, so to figure out your square footage of your wall, you just take the length of your wall times the height of your wall, and that's the square footage. So the example that we're going to use at the end once we talk about all of these is our house. It's 48 by 48. We have 18-foot sidewalls, and we're just going to pretend there's no windows or doors, so it'll give us a nice even square footage number. If you were going to get your product, you would subtract all the windows and doors.
Yes, so if you just did the basic math, if you're planning out your budget, just know it's like if you just figure your wall height and length, you're going to come out at the top end of what it's going to cost you for everything.
So that's another way to insulate, and I've never done this. So if you guys are interested in how this is done, you can check out Kyle's videos on these. I'm sure you're all familiar with R&R Buildings. We can leave a link for that in there, and you can see what it takes to put this system in, and how he is gonna seal around penetrations, all that kind of good stuff. So the next thing we're gonna talk about is closed cell spray foam, which is what we use on primarily all of our builds.
Yes.
And we use closed cell spray foam. We don't use open cell. And you're looking where we are, our spray foamer charges $1.50 a square foot per inch. So we spray 3 inches thick, that gets us to the R21. And so we're spending around $4.50 a square foot, and that includes labor. So with this one, the price is gonna include what it would cost for somebody to come in and do that. With your spray foam, the things that I like about the closed cell spray foam is you get everything sealed up. It forms to the cavities versus trying to cut your batt or your Rockwool, trying to perfectly form fit it in there. That is the hard part about insulating, and that's the thing I love about closed cell spray foam is it goes in there and expands and fills all those cavities so it becomes airtight, it becomes your vapor barrier. It gives you structural value if you're using closed cell. I don't even consider open cell. I don't think it is a good choice for our purpose. I think it has a purpose, but for what we do, I don't see a use for it. So we don't even put that as an option. It is going to be your most expensive, but it is going to be your best insulator. It's going to keep bugs out of your wall. It's going to keep air out of your wall. It's going to be your vapor barrier. And some of you are probably thinking, well, look at the problems you had. And no matter what choice you make, it comes down to application. If somebody doesn't do their job properly, then anything can be screwed up. So just keep that in mind. You want to make sure you get lots of referrals on someone that's going to be spray foaming if you use it. You should never have to worry about smell. You should never have to worry about off-gassing if it's done properly. You know, hindsight's 20/20, but I'm kind of glad this situation happened to us because I learned and educated myself on spray foam, what it should and shouldn't be. And you don't have to take my word for it. And I'm not even pushing spray foam. I'm just telling you, I believe from my experience that it's the best product by far.
At least for where we build and
Yes.
what we're trying to build. So again, I think that's where it goes back to like your building zone. You do need to take that into consideration.
Yes.
Because like where you put your vapor barrier, it changes somewhere down.
Depending on where you are in the country.
Yeah. The reason why we want to break all this down and like also talk about spray foam being a just separate, like all on its own spray foam is because there still are a lot of people that will encourage you to do a combination, a hybrid system of some of the options that we've talked about. And that is one of the key reasons why our situation, why it was the way it was.
Yeah, it was a bad spray foam job. It wasn't as thick as it needed to be, and then we put unfaced batt insulation over it, which was changing the science behind how the wall system works. So in our area, the vapor barrier needs to be on the warm side of the wall. The spray foam is your vapor barrier, and then if you throw batt fiberglass insulation up against it, you're changing where the vapor barrier is. You're moving from the inside of the wall to the middle of the wall, which changes the dew point and all that kind of good stuff. So my opinion on insulating is whatever you choose a product and stick with it. Don't mix and match because you're going to start creating problems. I'm sure some people watching this are going to disagree with me, but there is, for a hybrid wall system, this is something that's done commonly throughout the country. I do not believe it's a good idea. But there is a document, and we can also post that document in the description that specifically says how you're to obtain your R values, how much R value needs to come from spray foam, how much R value needs to come from fiberglass insulation. And then in fine print, you'll see that it says you need to add a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches of closed cell spray foam to avoid any potential moisture issues. But by the time you do the math, like you're running out of wall space to do both of them. And this document I have, it was supplied to me by one of the spray foam manufacturers in this company. It came from sprayfoam.org, which is where the spray foamers obtain their education, their training, all that kind of good stuff. So this isn't something I just fabricated. We'll put it in the description so that you guys can check it out for yourself. So throughout our process, Spray Jones from Canada, he's got a YouTube channel. He reached out to us, kind of helped us navigate this whole process. So if you want more information on spray foam, the do's, the don'ts, all that kind of good stuff, you should check out his channel. And he is a professional spray foamer. He does it for a living. He sprays in one of the most harsh climates up in Canada that you can do. So he is very, very knowledgeable. He's got videos that break down what the real R value of fiberglass is when it's installed, what the R value of all this stuff is once it's installed. He talks about hot roof systems where you're encapsulating your whole house. He covers everything, so it'd be very educational for you to watch some of his stuff if you're more interested in that. He talks about how flammable and the things you need to consider when using spray foam. And if that is a concern of yours, I can guarantee you that they wouldn't allow you to spray foam your house if your house was just going to burst into flames. So I would not let that concern you. If it's done properly and you seal up your walls and all that stuff, you're not going to have a problem. So one other method I want to talk about is using polystyrene or pink board. They call it all different kinds of stuff, but it's the insulation that we use underneath our concrete floors. Lots of people are starting to use this in their walls to try to save on money. I did the math, so a 2-inch thick polystyrene board is an R10. So to get to the residential requirement of R20, you'd have to do 2 layers of that, and that comes to $3.50 a square foot. I think this is a viable option in post frame. It's just to execute it is going to take a lot more work than just cutting it and slapping it in there, because to get your walls sealed, you're going to have to seal between all the girts with can foam, and then you're going to have to seal around your posts and your columns. And to me, it just seems like a lot of extra work and not really worth it. I think there's a lot of people out there that have done it and probably done it well and have had good success. But when you're talking about it's $3.50 to get to that R20, and that's not considering all your cans of foam. I don't even know how many cans of foam you would have to seal that up. It's probably going to be up there in the $4 a square foot range. And so to me, I just don't feel like I would want to do that. Now, if it's your shop or something like that, where you're just going to use 1 layer, that might be the option you want to go. So maybe you could do that in your garage and then do something else in your house. There's all kinds of different things you could do, but I just wouldn't mix and match in the same wall cavity. We've talked about, all these different options, costs. One of the biggest things to consider, so if you can see all these windows behind us, one thing to consider is how am I going to fill all these little cavities? Because if it was just one big open wall, throwing fiberglass up there, you could probably do a pretty good job of filling that cavity and getting a good result. But when you talk about all these windows and doors and all the little nooks and crannies that you're going to have to get insulation in around electrical boxes, plumbing, all that stuff, you are really going to have to take your time and do a really good job. And it just gets really difficult. Whereas with spray foam, you spray it in there and it expands and it fills all those little cavities, nooks and crannies. Now, I have zero affiliation with any spray foam company, fiberglass company, Rockwool, Siga Majrex, none of them. My opinion is based on what we have experienced and the experience from building and seeing what works and doesn't work. We've kind of talked about some 4 different options. So we're going to put on the screen right now price breakdown. The only one that is going to include labor is the closed cell spray foam. All the others are something you could DIY on your own. If you're going to use closed cell spray foam, one more thing is I personally would not buy the froth packs, and when you do the math, it just doesn't add up, and you're probably going to hate your life. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the price breakdown. This is based on a 48 by 48 with 18-foot sidewalls. We're just talking about the walls. We're not subtracting for windows or doors. This is just to give you an idea of the difference in price. So the first option is going to be the closed cell spray foam. That's going to be $4.50 a square foot for 3 inches thick. That's going to seal your walls. It's going to give you your vapor barrier, and it's going to add structural integrity. The total for that is $15,552, and that does include labor. So that's somebody coming in, spraying your house, you don't touch anything. The second is going to be the system that Kyle, I talked about, was doing, the Siga Majrex with Rockwool. That is going to come in at $3.06 a square foot for materials. The total for that is going to be $10,575. So that's for the materials to do the same structure. So you're looking at about a $5,000 difference, but keep in mind that does not include labor, but it's something that you could, I believe you could achieve on your own and could save you $5,000. And I think that would be a pretty good system. The next is going to be the polystyrene. That comes in at about $3.50 a square foot, not including your can foam to seal around your edges or labor, and that's going to be $12,096. So, I mean, that's only a few $1,000s less than closed cell spray foam. So, in my opinion, I don't know if I would go that route unless I was just going to do like one layer maybe in my shop or something like that. And then the R19 Fiberglass Batt with a 6 mil vapor barrier on the inside is $1.92 square foot, no labor included. And that's $6,635. So you can see that is probably about $9,000 cheaper than the closed cell spray foam. So with that being said, with no affiliation to anybody, my first choice would be spray foam. I think you're going to get the best value for your money. It's going into that cavity, it's expanding, filling every nook and cranny, sealing out for bugs, air, it's your vapor barrier, and in the post frame, you're getting significant structural value from that. Mm-hmm. And then I think the Siga Majrex system, from what I've heard and read about, seems like it's a pretty sound system. So I would rate that number 2 on my list. I haven't watched all of Kyle's videos. I've seen little bits and pieces of it on his Instagram. I've never tried it, so I can't tell you how labor intensive it is. But maybe that's a question you could ask him. Sorry, Kyle. And then I would say the lowest is the fiberglass. Fiberglass insulation is just an inferior product compared to Rockwool or spray foam. And then, like I said, the polystyrene, for what it costs, it's like $55 a sheet right now for a 4x8 sheet. So it really doesn't make any sense to me, in my mind, to use that with the amount of labor it's going to take me to do a really good job and kind of get the same or similar value. So I'm going to rate that one last. So with all this being said, if whatever you choose, you just have to make sure it's done properly. If you're DIYing this stuff, you need to take time to make sure you're cutting those batts or Rockwool or whatever the case is to fit in those areas as tight as you can, as snug as you can, to get a good value. I think if any of these done right, you're going to have a house that's going to last you. Obviously, it's like anything. You can increase the value, increase your efficiency, the better product you choose for this situation. All right, guys, that's going to be a wrap on today's video. Don't forget we have design services. If you want to design your own post frame home, email us, design@mrpostframe. I can help you out with that. Secondly, we have a build group, Patreon build group for you self-builders. We talk about different topics every month. You get to be a part of a community of other self-builders and share information that way. But next video, we are going to break down all of the details that you need to think about when spray foaming your structure. So I'll go through the current build we're on, show you how we prepare for spray foam, show you things that you need to think about and watch for as it's happening. We'll give you a tour of the actual spray foam truck. And if this video does pretty well and you guys are interested, I will break down your different options for insulating your attic space or turning your attic space into a conditioned area. But as always, we appreciate you guys watching. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and we will catch you on the next video.